If I was considering having children today, I'm not sure if I'd want to bring up 3 children into this world. We all are behind the leadership of Israel based on the actions that we have no choice but to prevent an existential threat to the state of Israel and the Jewish nation.
There's a new war in the Middle East.
But that doesn't mean...
There have been 3 wars in the Middle East that have all come from Israel.
That doesn't mean that there's a horizon out there where we all pray and wish for peace.
I agree. I will say this. I do not hold your optimism about the future. Inside the United States, we have a convicted felon who's the president. You have something very similar in Israel. That's got to be talked about, man.
Israel is the only democratic state in the Middle East. And I think people can see today the critical importance of that deep, long-lasting friendship between the United States of America and the state of Israel.
There are people in the United States who would argue that Israel's wandering away from democracy. What is the actual ground truth in Israel? What is it like, and how would you answer those critics?
I would say that...
Ilan, I'm super excited to have you here. Can you just share a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what we have in front of us?
That's 3 big questions, Andy. So firstly, it's amazing to be here in Colorado Springs. When I came in last night, and when I walked out of the hotel to breathe the air, I just went, wow. It actually tastes different. It feels good. And it's probably a good segue to who I am. I am the CEO of BioHarvest Sciences. We are the global leader in plant cell biology. As a company, we pride ourselves in understanding better than any other company out there how to unlock the secrets of what is 500,000 plants out there that each have unique treasure, unique phytomedicinal compounds, phytonutrients that are so critical for our overall health and wellness. However, up until today, industry has not been able to harness those phytomedicinal compounds in a way which is consistent, economically viable, and actually where we're able to build patents and IP protection around. And our unique technology that we spent $100 million over 17 years, it's called botanical synthesis, has gotten us to really climb Mount Everest and back. Probably a very good analogy to use here.
But so I'm gonna interrupt you only because 2 important things. First, you're one of the first guests to come on the show that does not come from an intelligence background. You come from a business background, and you're a captain in industry, and I want people to understand that. But I also want to make sure people understand where you're from and where all of this research has been done, because the world right now is paying attention to a new war, a war between Iran and Israel, and you are connected to that. Can you share a little bit?
Correct. I'm very proud to say that BioHarvest Sciences, it is a Canadian-Israeli company. All of our research and development is based in Israel. We are, the company was founded 17 years ago by 2 Israeli co-founders. And I'm very proud to say that, just like if you look back from the state of Israel in 1948 and you look at the innovation that's come out of the state of Israel to really change the world, from drip irrigation to help feed ourselves much more efficiently and leveraging the land in a much more effective way, all the way through to desalination and the need to actually, for us in Israel, we always thought the next war 10 years ago was going to be around fresh water, just given the challenges of the Jordan River and who controlled the sources of the Jordan River. So off we went, and just the sheer, I would say, magnitude of impact and unintended consequences of not being able to have a source of water, fresh source of water, moved us into desalination. And today, a large majority of the water used in Israel is desalinated. And obviously, literally the majority is also recycled. So it's this kind of breakthrough mindset from an innovation perspective is kind of in our DNA and in our culture. And this is really, I guess, the genesis of the technology that we have called botanical synthesis that we're going to talk more about.
Yeah, so it's many times in the United States, people don't understand why the United States and Israel are so close. They don't understand why the United States supports Israel, backs Israel, when Israel has it has a reputation around the world of being very conflict oriented, very risk tolerant, very aggressive and assertive. And we're certainly seeing that right now between Israel and Iran. What people don't understand is exactly what you just said. The incredible amount of innovation, the breakthrough sciences that come from Israel. Today, we're talking about your company, Vinia, and this incredible science that you've broken through in terms of plant biology and bringing that biology to the forefront in terms of medical practices, supplemental practices, et cetera. That innovation is unique. And that innovation is a big part of what makes the United States and Israel such close allies.
Look, you're correct. And first of all, it's anchored in the big D, which is democracy. And Israel is the only democratic state in the Middle East. And I think people can see today the critical importance of that deep, long-lasting friendship between the United States of America and the state of Israel.
There are people in the United States who would argue that Israel's wandering away from democracy, just like there are people who would argue the United States is doing the same thing. What is the actual ground truth in Israel? What is it like, and how would you answer those critics?
I would say that that perspective, it couldn't be further from the truth. When Israel was established in 1948, a core part of the establishment of the State of Israel was around every citizen of Israel, no matter what religion, no matter where your background is. If you're a citizen of the State of Israel, you all get the same equal rights. And I see this every single day myself, having lived now in Israel for 11 years. You can obviously hear from my accent. It's not a typical Israeli accent. I myself, very connected to the State of Israel from a spiritual and faith perspective, made a decision with my wife to bring up our children in the State of Israel. And in 2014, we moved from the U.S., where I was working with the Coca-Cola company, to really be part of the startup nation, the crazy entrepreneurial spirit, which was really on fire in the State of Israel back in the early 2000s, and obviously has led to a lot of the innovation we talk about today. But as I see it as a citizen, the level of peace and tolerance and partnership as it relates to the different communities, it's very, very strong. There are, let's all be honest, there are times when there are factions on either side where they cross certain lines that the core of the country feels very, very uncomfortable with. But at a basic rights level, when it comes to education, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to all the critical elements that citizens expect, you have a real democracy. When it comes to voting rights, you have a real democracy.
So then what is happening right now with Netanyahu and the corruption charges and the criminal charges?
I'm here to talk about, Andrew, I'm here to talk about how we change the world and how we utilize health as a company.
I get it.
And so
here's the thing. Nobody's interested in talking about the world unless they talk about the realities, right? And it's one thing to come on and talk about a product. I agree. It's a completely different thing to actually tell a story. If we talk about a product that comes from Israel, that's not going to change the world. If you tell about a story that involves how an entrepreneur from the United States went to Israel to tap into Israeli entrepreneurial culture to create a product that's designed to change the world, that's a story, right?
So this correct, and that's the story we should be talking about versus getting into a specific discussion on our prime minister and
nobody wants to buy a product if they don't believe in the democracy behind the product. And that's the problem. This is what I'm trying to say. And this is what frankly, I think many people don't want to talk about. Inside the United States, we have a convicted felon who's the president, right? A convicted criminal in the state of New York is the president of the United States. You have something very similar in Israel. That's got to be talked about, man. We've got to be able to talk about the truth about what our democracies look like before we try to say that we're trying to change the world. Because if we're not trying to change the world to make it more peaceful and better in the future, to make it more fair and equanimable in the future, then what are we doing?
But when you go back to democracy, Andrew, it's citizens like you and me and leaders like you and me that are striving to change the world by leading by example. And in the state of Israel today, you have thousands of leaders like me who every day just wish for peace. As a father of 3 children, I have a 19-year-old that's serving in the military. I have a 17-year-old that's just, shortly will go into the military. And I have a 13-year-old daughter that will also serve her military service for 3 years. And I speak on behalf of all of the parents out there. We just want peace. We sing songs of peace. When we pray 3 times a day, we pray for peace.
So why is there so much war?
This is really the heart of what the people's DNA is all about. And yes, there are leaders out there that sometimes lead with conviction. Sometimes their leadership skills don't have necessarily the empathy or the, we could all throw stones. But at the core, when you look at the core of the population and the people, we all want a world where our children are not having to serve in the military for, it's not just 3 years. After 3 years of military service, it's 2 months every single year up until, the mid-40s. We want a world of peace where our children can live and breathe beautiful fresh air that you have here. We have similar types of fresh air like you have here in Colorado, but fresh air filled with peace where you don't have to look over your shoulder. And that's why one of the facets of what made me really, as I came to BioHarvest, and I actually came to BioHarvest as an investor and invested in the company, was just blown away by the quality of the R&D. What I found when I came to BioHarvest Sciences was a gold mine of R&D that was built on the tenacity of Israeli female entrepreneurs. And I came to this company, I fell in love with the technology, I invested, and I was really lucky that after driving them crazy in the due diligence process, because I don't come from money, and whatever I invest, it's a very deep due diligence. And after driving them crazy, they came to me and they said, look, we feel that you're connected to our company. We understand that we need somebody with your experience, global experience at operating large businesses to bring our technology to the marketplace. And when I looked at this opportunity, I was 45 years old, spent 18 years as a senior executive at the Coca-Cola company, a great 18 years, running businesses across the world, came to Israel, built a big data IoT and software company together with 2 young Israeli entrepreneurs that we landed up having a lot of, we say in Hebrew, mazal, a lot of luck. And we exited to Anheuser-Busch InBev, the largest brewery in the world. It was the first major food tech exit to an international company in the Israeli ecosystem. And I was looking for a legacy opportunity to change the world. 45 years old, kind of figured I got another 20 years in me to really make a difference, to make an impact. And I started to kind of step back and say, look, I have 3 children. I'm blessed to be married to an amazing woman, my childhood sweetheart, for 26 years. And I started to look at the world and thought to myself, I want to do something that's going to change the world. And when I saw this opportunity and I understood the gravity and magnitude of being able to represent, in a way, 500,000 plants out there. You asked me my job earlier. I said I was CEO of BioHarvest Sciences. Yes, I am CEO of BioHarvest Sciences. But at the end of the day, I'm an ambassador for 500,000 plants out there that are saying, world, look at us. There is conflict. There are wars all around the world, which are fought in many cases, around many aspects anchored in resources. One of the biggest and most important resource that we can have as people is our health. And if we're able to find a way to leverage the power of these plants without abusing them, to actually use without abusing, because today the entire world is abusing the plant kingdom as it relates to climate change, as it relates to toxicity, toxins in the soil, heavy metals. So I come here in front of you actually looking at leveraging the power, being an ambassador of 500,000 plants, and with the technology that we've built over the last 17 years. And as you know, it's a very mature technology that we've been able to scale. I come here seeking peace, believing hand over heart that health, the ability to change people's lives, fundamentally change people's lives from a health and wellness perspective, is probably one of the biggest bridges to peace. People used to say sport is a great bridge to peace. I believe, hand over heart, that health and bringing quality next generation of plant-based therapeutic solutions to people anchored in a technology built and scaled in the land of Israel can potentially be the best bridge to create peace in the Middle East, and also to make sure, as we look, in 20 years' time, we're going to have 10 billion people on this planet. You know, if I was considering having children today, I'm not sure if I'd want to bring up 3 children into this world. It's scary when you think about the world that they're living in, the air that we're breathing, the food that we're eating, and the challenges we have, heavy metals, all the way through to, Andrew, how are we going to have enough nutrition to feed 10 billion people? And some of the biggest wars are over natural resources, are over food, are over water, right? But maybe, and you can call me naive, but I'm not, because I've seen it. I see it today, even within our business today in the state of Israel. We have a significant business in the Arab community. And we'll talk about that because our product is very unique, because it brings all the power, all the benefits of one bottle of red wine, all the pie seed resveratrol in one bottle of red wine, with no sugar, no calories, no alcohol. And with a Muslim population, this population wants all of those cardiovascular benefits, and we bring, that comes from, a bottle of red wine, and we'll go back to the French paradox, and all the polyphenols that exist in the red wine, specifically the pie seed resveratrol, which in our technology is the polyphenol that we magnify 100 times, utilizing our biotechnology. And the impact that we're having in this community, and when we market to this critical community, we market in their language. So culturally relevant.
So there's a couple things that I want to make sure I flag here. So first of all, for everybody watching, this is not a paid promotion for Vinia. I want to make sure everybody understands that, because we have the product here on display. It's the first time we've displayed a product. It's the first time we've had a CEO in. And like most CEOs, you're very focused on talking about the product. The marketing, the benefits of it. I think the science is fascinating. I would love to talk about the science.
But we've hardly mentioned the product. To be fair to me, we've hardly mentioned the product. We've been talking about health, and health being a critical gateway to peace, and the importance and the dream of peace in the Middle East. As I stand here today, sitting here in front of you.
There's a war. There's a new war in the Middle East.
But that doesn't mean...
There have been 3 wars in the Middle East that have all come from Israel.
That doesn't mean that there's a horizon out there where we all pray and wish for peace.
I agree.
And the actions that we're taking, right, have an opportunity of bringing peace to the Middle East.
I agree.
Right?
There's always an opportunity, but we have to.
But we have to have belief. We have to have belief in that opportunity.
You have to also have objective reality based in today. So I asked you about Netanyahu. You were very eloquent about steering away from that. What I took away from your eloquent answer was that you don't want to talk about leaders, because you differentiated between the pulse of the people and the leadership of Israel. So I'm interpreting that to mean that you see that there is a differentiation between the leadership of Israel and the people of Israel.
No, you're putting words into my mouth.
I'm not saying that you said that. I'm saying that the fact that you dodged that question, the way that you dodged that question, leaves me space to imply that you believe that the pulse of the Israeli people and the leadership that's on display worldwide of Israel are not the same. They are not congruent.
I think congruency is a function of time and a function of specific issues. If we look at today, as I hold my phone here, my family are sitting in bomb shelters.
Right.
And so when it comes to congruency as it relates to what is happening today, I believe the state of Israel and the people of Israel are all behind the leadership of Israel.
Okay.
And we all are behind the leadership of Israel based on the actions that we have no choice but to prevent an existential threat to the state of Israel and the Jewish nation. Because 6 million people in the Holocaust did not die for no reason. You had thousands of people that survived the Holocaust on boats to the state of Israel, fighting to create a state of Israel. And with the dream of having a state of Israel and living in peace, ultimately with our neighbors. We've seen it with Egypt. We've seen it with Jordan. We're starting to see a bridge potentially to peace in Lebanon and Syria. Maybe there can be a bridge to peace in the near term with Iran. People forget that before this regime, there was a great relationship. In the late 60s, early 70s, there was a great relationship between the state of Israel and the state of Iran, whether it related to exchange of education, multiple different levels that governments exchange. And who knows, maybe the Abraham Accords will extend to the Isaac Accords, will extend to the Moses Accords, and the Middle East can be an example of democracy that the world can look upon. It is something out there that I believe today has never, up until today, and what we're seeing play out, has never been a realistic aspiration. People would say never. But the opportunity of me and you sitting in coffee shops with our families, enjoying the beauty of the Lebanese Riviera, all the way through to the beauty that exists in the land of Iran. This is not, I believe, a totally unrealistic opportunity. And as Theodor Herzl said, one of the great leaders of the Jewish nation and the heart of Zionism, if you will it, it is no dream. So people like me and leaders like me, and there are many leaders like me across the state of Israel, we look to not to bring ourselves into political roles, but how we can use our technology, how we can use the knowledge, the know-how that we've built, largely driven by the cultural need to develop this kind of technology, and how we do this to change the world, to make the world a better place, and to act as that critical bridge between nations, between religions. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. We don't have to talk about our product, Vinia. I have no issues. We can stay on this subject the entire time. But fundamentally, we all have red blood. Doesn't matter your religion, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your sexual orientation, biases, doesn't matter. Everybody who has red blood should be breathing with the best oxygen in their body and living a life full of richness and quality. And if companies like ours and many other Israeli companies out there can do this in a way that bridges and in a way fulfills the prophecy of Isaiah, which talks about the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, working hard to be a shining light to other nations, we as a company and myself having the privilege to be in the leadership role, every day we strive to move step by step to be able to do this, to be able to live in the words of Isaiah, and to be able to be that critical bridge between nations, between people, all ultimately who just want to live to the maximum our precious time on this planet.
So there's a number of things that are interesting to me, but respectfully, I get the impression that you're not going to talk about them. So I'd love to hear more about your journey away from whatever you were in the United States, how you chose to immigrate to Israel. I would love to hear more about the children that you have in the military who are, if there's a war that continues to escalate, they will be the ones fighting that war. I would love to hear more about whether you had this ideology that you so eloquently espouse now, whether you've had that for a long time or whether that is something that has developed with age.
All really good, provocative questions.
Right. Interesting questions.
And I'm happy to explore and open my heart to you because you've been very gracious to invite me here. You know, I've come halfway around the world, multiple planes to get here. You can see my wife when she saw me this morning. She said, "Oh my God, you look terrible. You got bags under your eyes." I'm like, "Oh, great. This is a great way to be on air." And so hopefully, I'm very happy to explore all of these areas. Ultimately, for people to kind of get into my head and my headspace and understand, like, what are we trying to do to really make the world a better world for generations to come?
Because here's the truth of it. The world doesn't need another supplement. And the vast majority of supplements out there are trash, right? The vast majority of supplements are filler and empty promises and plastic bottles that are being marketed towards people of ignorance. That is the vast majority of supplements. I don't believe that's what you have. I don't believe that's what you're trying to do.
Correct.
And in my experience with Vinia, which I take regularly, that has not been my experience. It is a powerful, useful enhancement supplement, cardiovascularly, sleep-wise, energetically, for all of my athletic endeavors. So I love what you have. I would love to understand more about the person who brought this to be.
So how about this? If you're okay, I'd like to explain the technology that we have. I'll go deep into myself, and I will open my heart to you and your audience. You have my promise on that. I'll hold your hand, right? And I'll promise you that I will do that, okay? Because I think, and I'm happy to share because it's all in the spirit of moving to a better place. But what I would like to do is,
let's talk about the technology, but
let's talk about. I just want to talk about the technology at a high level,
yes, and
in the context of how we want to use the technology to bridge borders and change the world.
I also want to talk about it in layman's terms, because your knowledge of polyphenols and medicine and plant-based properties is deep, but that is not the typical
I'm going to
person.
take you to a space that I think you're going to enjoy.
Let's go.
Okay. So look, we all understand that the first pharmaceutical drugs, they came from the plant kingdom. And there are many different examples of that. However, the pharmaceutical companies, they walked away from the plant kingdom for a number of reasons. And honestly, I can understand where they stood. When I take you through these three reasons very quickly, there was good reason because of the challenges that they faced with dealing with the plant kingdom. They knew that the treasures existed in all those plants, but there were major issues. Issue number one, consistency. Plants grow in unique ecosystems and environments, and it's impossible to get consistency out of a plant because the environment's always changes. Specifically, Andrew, today, with the radical changes you get in climate change and all the other challenges you deal with, the quality of the water, the soils, etc. This is the first big problem. The second problem, it's kind of weird. I say this from my spiritual side, but when God made all the 500,000 plants, the plants that contain the most critical phytonutrients, phytomedicinal compounds, are found in such small, minute levels inside the plant that you got to just grow thousands and thousands of acres of those plants to be able, and then extraction, to be able to get enough material to make it economically viable.
What is phytomedicinal? When you use that term, what are you talking about?
The term refers to the fact that inside, I talk about phytomedicinal molecules or phytomedicinal compounds. There are critical polyphenols, antioxidants, proteins that are so critical, saponins that are so critical to our body's overall health and wellness and the functioning of our body.
So a phytomedicinal is essentially a medicinal compound,
right,
identified in
a plant,
right, but beneficial to the human body.
Correct. And you have phytonutrients, which are more related to our nutrition, but you also have plants that contain phytomedicinal compounds.
So the consistency issue makes total sense.
Correct.
Anybody who's ever seen the ring of a tree can see that every year of that tree's life is different. Sometimes there's forest fires, and sometimes there's years of great growth, and sometimes there's years of drought. So you can see that the environment is always changing. Sometimes days are longer, sometimes heat is higher, summers are changing, winters are changing. So it makes total sense, the consistency challenge that pharmaceutical companies had to face.
Right, and then the economic viability is critical, because ultimately
you can't have 1,000 plants for a gram of compound.
And then the third factor is patents. It's really, really hard to patent nature, virtually impossible. So consistency, economic viability, and patents is why pharmaceutical companies move to technologies like chemical synthesis. Now, what the pharmaceutical companies did with chemical synthesis is they identified inside the plant what they felt was the most critical molecule that was causing the positive effect from a health and wellness perspective, and then worked their magic to chemically synthesize this in a laboratory with great consistency and at a very, very low price with great economic viability. And of course, they had their patents. What happens in nature is it's never just one actual molecule by itself. It's all about the synergistic effect, right? Because you have multiple, in the case of our red grape cell superfood vinia, you have multiple polyphenols that all work together. Yes, there is what we believe is a hero polyphenol, which is our Piceid resveratrol, but it works together with catechin, quercetin, and thioceanins and tannins.
So again, I want to bring this down to layman's terms. What is a polyphenol?
So basically, plants, they produce polyphenols, antioxidants, always in order to protect themselves.
So what does a polyphenol do?
So different polyphenols will have different effects on the human body, right? So in our case, the multitude of polyphenols in our product, right, has a certain mechanism of action on the human body, which increases arterial dilation.
Making your blood vessels dilate larger.
Exactly. And we'll talk more about that later. But let's stay on the technology, okay?
So a polyphenol sounds like it's a specific type of compound in phytomedicinal.
It's polyphenols ladders up to antioxidants. I'm sure you've heard of the word antioxidants.
Yep, correct.
You have antioxidants, you have proteins, right? You have, multiple different types of materials that are inside plants. Each of them are very, very complex worlds.
But what was happening was with chemical synthesis in the pharmaceutical,
you don't get the power of the synergistic effect, okay? That's not to say that, obviously, pharmaceutical companies have created some amazing advances in the development of drugs in the last 50, 60 years. But understandably, one of the unintended consequences of chemical synthesis is you don't get the synergistic effect, okay? In some cases, it's critical. In other cases, it's not so critical. So I want to come back to our technology solves each of these three problems. 1, consistency. 2, economic viability. 3 is patents. Now, let me just take 3 minutes to explain how we do that, okay? And we do this in a way that takes the plant once. We take the plant once. We know exactly where inside the plant are the critical cells that produce those important phytonutrients or phytomedicinal compounds. And we take those cells, Andrew, and we pretty much do what you did back in high school in a science class, but on a massive scale, where we take those cells and we grow them in petri dishes. And we do hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments where we change the food we feed the cells. We change the lighting conditions. We change the temperature and a number of variables that I'm not going to discuss on this podcast or any other podcast because it's part of our IP and our know-how. And we, at this stage, at a tissue culture stage, we get the cells to do 2 things. 1, we get the cells to produce the exact same mirror of the phytonutrients that are produced by the plant. We call this mirroring. 2, we get the cells by focusing on a specific, what I called before, a hero polyphenol or a hero protein, right? Or a hero saponin. We get the cells to magnify the production of that specific hero molecule versus what's contained in the plant by an order of magnitude. So in the case of the red grape and the specific hero polyphenol we call piceid resveratrol, and I'm sure your audience, many of your audience would have heard about resveratrol before. We produce piceid resveratrol with a big capital P. And we're the only company in the world that can produce piceid resveratrol at a commercial and industrial scale from the red grape together with all the other polyphenols. Why? Because we magnified the levels by 100 times versus what's found inside the actual red grape. At this stage, Andrew, we lock the cell bank. We never go back to the plant. We have not been back to the plant. Our company was founded in 2007. We finalized this technology around about 2013. So literally for the last 12 years, right? We just work from a cell bank. And then what we figured out what to do, and I think you'll find this pretty interesting as an athlete, we figured out how to get these cells from literally that are growing in solid media, in a petri dish, like in science class. And we figured out how to toughen them up, strengthen them, because we understood very quickly that plant cells are like human cells. They have memories. And we understood how we could toughen them up and condition them so they were strong enough to actually survive and multiply in industrial scale bioreactors with liquid media. And we're talking 1,200 liter bioreactors. Today, BioHarvest Sciences produces at the largest industrial scale bioreactors in the world. Our manufacturing facility has north of 150 bioreactors today. That each bioreactor is 1,200 liters. And these cells, they multiply inside these bioreactors normally for 18 to 20 days. They produce on a logarithmic curve these critical phytomedicinal compounds or phytonutrients that we want them to produce based on us holding the food consistent, the temperature consistent, the lighting consistent at optimal levels that we discovered early on in the process. And we produce hundreds of kilos of cells that we then harvest. We drain the water. There's no insecticides, there's no fungicides, there's no herbicides because we're growing in aseptic bioreactors. We then literally are left with a rich mud that we simply dry. No solvents used in extraction, just the final dry powder. And that's what we have here. In the case of our Vinia product, just using it as an example, I'm not selling, I'm just using it as an example. Our Vinia product, where inside each capsule we have the same amount of piceid resveratrol as 1,000 red grapes, or if you go back to the French paradox, equivalent to 1 bottle of red wine. Obviously no sugar, no calories, and no alcohol. Now we're a science-based company, and we've done multiple clinical trials, double-blind placebo, published in peer-reviewed scientific journals. One clinical trial was also presented at the American Diabetes Association convention. The key clinical trial that we utilize in our marketing talks about how after taking one of these capsules every single day for 90 days, we were able to significantly increase your flow-mediated dilation of your arteries, your arterial dilation. And this is the last thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to come back to the technology. In our human body, we have 60,000 miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries. That's crazy when you think about it. And we need to make sure that those 60,000 miles are operating like 4-lane highways, 5-lane highways like you have here in the USA, not like little side roads, because the more arterial dilation, the more blood flow. And blood flow today, people are realizing, is the gift of life. Blood flow is the most important part of our body's operating mechanism. If you don't have good blood flow, your system, your whole entire system doesn't work effectively. Not just your cardiovascular system, your digestive system. If you think about your brain, 2% of your body mass is your brain. It utilizes 20% of the oxygen of your body and 15% of the blood flow. With our Vinia, we're able to get more blood flow to the brain, to the peripheral part of the brain, below the blood-brain barrier, more oxygen to the brain, the removal of cellular toxins, goodbye brain fog. as you talked about before. More blood flow means more oxygen. More oxygen means more physical energy. And it goes on and on and on. So this is just an example. What you see here today is an example. It's just a validation of our technology. Because what was critical was for us to be able to build a platform technology. So our technology, which we call botanical synthesis, it's a platform technology. It's not just red grapes. I have here today olive cells with the highest levels of verboscicide in the world, that we've done some in vitro testing that has demonstrated the ability on human liver cells to significantly reduce the fat levels. Do you know how many people in the United States of America today are dealing with, fatty livers? Okay. So this is the technology. The technology, botanical synthesis, as we call it, platform technology, it can be applied to the next generation of science-based therapeutic solutions.
So what works against blood flow in the human body? What is it that prevents people?
One big thing, it's called age. And we can't change the way God made us. We age, right? And as you age, and it starts really early, right? At the age of late 20s, your body starts to produce less nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is a critical vasodilator. And your body starts to produce more of the bad stuff. So nitric oxide, I like to say, keeping it simple, is the good stuff. You want your body producing more and more nitric oxide. You want your body also producing less and less of the bad stuff, which is ET1. So nitric oxide is a vasodilator, right? ET1 is a vasoconstrictor. It hardens your arteries. So what happens is those 60,000 miles of arteries, veins, and capillaries, they are all lined with hundreds of millions of endothelial cells. Those endothelial cells are the cells that produce the nitric oxide and the ET1. So as you get older, those cells produce less nitric oxide and more ET1.
What is it about the aging process that does that?
It's just the physiology of the body. We get older, right? And basically you have oxidative damage to the cells, and this is like the whole process. So what Vinia does is that we are very quickly solubilized in the intestinal tract. Okay, 82% according to our testing is solubilized of our active ingredient in the intestinal tract. According to our clinical trial, it takes 20 minutes to go from the intestinal tract through the membrane into the blood plasma, and we last for 12 hours in the body, at least 12 hours. In fact, in our clinical trial, I'm kind of mad that we didn't do it longer than 12 hours, but the end point was 12 hours with a peak after 1 hour and a peak after 5 hours. And so what happens is the endothelial cells obviously absorb our active ingredients, the piceid resveratrol and all the other polyphenols, and start to produce more nitric oxide and less ET1. And this is why you have this amazing increase in arterial dilation.
So what is it, if there's a peak at 1 hour and a peak at 5 hours, what is the 90-day sequence for?
Great. So look, we're a science-based company. So our clinical trial was based on 90-day endpoints. So we always say to people that for best results, based on the clinical trial, we suggest you take the product for 90 days. There are many people that feel the product much quicker, right? Much, much quicker. Again, we're a conservative organization. We're a science-based organization, right? Ultimately, and I want to go back here, I want to go away from the product, go back here. Our technology platform is, and we'll go back to where we started in this discussion, when you think about, how health can be a critical bridge in building peace in this world. There are today major indications that are unresolved. Major. Hundreds of orphan diseases, many, many major indications today that the current solutions that are approved are not as effective as we would like them to be. It's better than nothing, but not as effective as we would like them to be. We believe as a company, and we have a huge following of support in the world that believes that the secrets to many of those major indications lie in the plant kingdom. So our technology, we're focusing on leveraging our technology today by working with giants of industry. And we have one key pharmaceutical partner that we're working with on an approved drug that we're working on helping them bring consistent biological material from a plant, from a supply chain that's heavily challenged from a consistency perspective, as well as from a geopolitical sensitivity perspective, to actually utilize our technology to produce a really, really critical biological material, which is a critical component of this approved drug, all the way through to an agreement that we signed in December with the largest sweetener company in the world called Tate & Lyle. 186-year-old company, amazing people that are also looking to find the solutions, the zero-calorie natural solutions out there from the plant kingdom to replace sugar. Because look at the evil that sugar creates as it relates to, our, at the end of the day, the quality of life and the quantity of life that we lead as human beings. So we're working now on plants that have very, we talked about the magnification. These are unique plants out there, which are not commonly known. Tate & Lyle's done an amazing job with their team in identifying these plants, sometimes in remote parts of the world, not obvious areas of the world, and utilizing our technology to take specific sweet protein in that plant that is at a very small level, magnifying it, and then producing it in our large-scale bioreactors to the point that we can democratize that compound to the world. Because at the end of the day, BioHarvest Sciences North Star, Andrew, which I probably should have started there in this discussion before you took me into a discussion on political leaders. But BioHarvest Sciences North Star of the company ultimately is to discover, develop, manufacture, and democratize life-changing compounds from plants that will significantly improve the health and wellness of hundreds of millions of consumers around the world, but importantly, do it in a way which preserves the planet for generations to come. The sustainability credentials of our technology, we utilize a micro fraction of the land, the water, and energy. Oh, and by the way, Vinia, and what we've done with Vinia in producing the king of blood flow and changing today the lives of tens of thousands of people, soon to be hundreds of thousands of people with this product and the different delivery mechanisms, it's just a validation of the technology. Because when I came to the company 5 years ago and I got this amazing opportunity from the two co-founders that had invested literally at the time, 12, 13 years, and one of the co-founders, $20 million of his own money. That's belief. We had to have a product that we took all the way. We could have gone a different route with this product. We could have gone, potentially a route which had a much tougher regulatory path. We decided to go the supplement path, but making sure we did all the science, solubility, bioavailability, which are the two most critical components that you need to be asking when you're taking a supplement. Is it soluble? Is it bioavailable? Is it efficacious? Does it have clinical trials? Are the clinical trials on the product? Not the ingredients, not one of the ingredients or a few of the, no, on the actual final product. We had to go down this path to validate the power of the technology so I can sit today in front of some of the biggest pharmaceutical companies of the world. Who, Andrew, today, you won't believe it. It happens to me in multiple conversations in the last 12 months. Specifically, we've seen a drastic change, and a lot of it is policy-driven, where you have chief medical officers of pharmaceutical companies today are realizing that maybe it's time to go back to the future, to go back to the plant kingdom, to find the next generation of science-based therapeutic solutions. Because finally, there's a technology out there that's able to be that bridge that can deliver the consistency that they need, the economic viability that they need, and patents.
So, don't get me wrong. You are a very effective chief evangelical officer, right?
I'm an ambassador for 500,000 plants.
I can hear your faith. I can hear your belief. I can hear your idealized.
You can't have conviction and passion if you don't believe in something.
I'm not debating that for a second. At a certain level, it sounds like what you're saying is you clone plant cells. Is that pretty much a
if you want to simplify, but not what we are actually doing is taking it one step further, because remember I told you about that stage in our process whereby we take the cell and we're exposing the cell to the optimal conditions to get the cell to produce what we want the cell to produce. And importantly, our technology is non-GMO. This is really critical. We do not in any way change the molecular composition of the cell, the DNA, RA. No, we're just optimizing the surroundings to get the maximum out of that cell. And then we found a way to efficiently get that cell to, once we lock the cell and when the cell produces what we want the cell to produce based on just changing the surroundings, we then figured out a way on how to get that cell to multiply and clone.
So
quickly.
when you talked about toughening it up, what does that mean? What does that mean?
So the best example I'll give you, and I like to use this example, and it's probably very congruent to you as a person. I'll personalize it for you. Okay. So, I mean, you're an athlete. You're super fit. When you have young children, and you have children like in preschool, right? Okay.
Yeah, 7 and 12.
So so you look at your 7-year-old, okay, and you're like at an athletics or like a let's call it like some kind of athletic event, and you see a whole bunch of 7-year-old kids, and you go, wow, that kid's really fast. That kid has potential. Okay, you can't take that kid and have that kid run a marathon, right? You have to over time strengthen that kid. You'll strengthen them with different exercises, different coaches, different routines, different food, right? Different nutrition, so that maybe at the age of 16, 17, that kid is strong enough to be able to run a marathon. Our cells are going from a petri dish into this, think about it, this 1,200 liter large industrial bioreactor with shear forces, because you need the shear forces in there. It's part of the biology, pumping oxygen in there at a very unique density. That's part of our IP that we climbed Mount Everest and back to figure out. And if you take a cell from the cell bank, from the tissue culture, from a petri dish, and you put it into that large bioreactor, it's dead, pretty much dead on arrival. So we have to train the cells. We figured out how to train the cells, how to toughen them up, how to condition them. And you remember I told you that plant cells are like human cells, they have memories. Well, that's part of our know-how on how we do that. So that these cells today perform and they grow 18 to 21 days in the bioreactors. They produce what they need to produce, and then we harvest the cells. And they've done their job. And we're left with this amazing, soluble, bioavailable, efficacious end product that can be used ultimately as a biological material for a pharmaceutical drug, all the way through to utilizing in the supplement industry. The cosmetic industry and the fragrance industry are now turning to our technology because consumers are demanding it like never before. People don't want to put anything on their skin that is synthetic, understanding the unintended consequences, all the way through to our partnership with Tate & Lyle in the nutrition industry. We also announced, I talked a lot about in the North Star of the company, the importance of preserving the planet for generations to come. Goes back to where we started this discussion. I have 3 kids. Please God, they're going to have many grandchildren. And I really worry about the world that my grandchildren are going to grow up in. And I'm sure you do as well. I haven't met anybody that when you actually ask them to think about it and you ask them to articulate 10 billion people, how are we going to feed ourselves? How are we going to deal with the multitude of new challenges that are going to come because of what we're doing to the environment as it relates to different indications that start to crop up?
So your chief concern with the future is population and environment?
Population, nutrition, environment, absolutely. Absolutely. And I believe, and we'll go back to where we started this discussion, that these factors are going to be the source of the next wars. And if we are able to address these factors, maybe there's a better chance for peace in this world.
I mean, I appreciate your point of view. I just don't think I could hold a more different point of view. When you create a super supplement, you're creating this for soldiers. Like that's who is going to buy this up in bulk. That's who is going to consume this first and foremost. And that's any supplement out there, whether it's a muscle building supplement or whether it's a better sleep supplement. Like people maybe have access. You may democratize access to it.
I would be a bit provocative back to you. What about if we don't need soldiers? What about a world where we don't need soldiers? Because I'm not creating it for soldiers.
World where
I'm creating this ultimately, if we go back to the genesis of all the work we've done in our R&D process and the $100 million and every bit of work we've done, the word soldiers has never entered into our vocabulary.
The word soldiers hasn't, but...
Right? The word military has never... It's all about aging. It's all about longevity. And every single person in this world, right, cares more about longevity, right, than they care about the enemy.
It doesn't matter what people care about. It matters what people afford. And here's the thing. I'm assuming BioHarvest is a for-profit company.
So
I'm assuming your patents are protecting your IP so that other people can't get them, which is the opposite of democratization. So you're building a for-profit company. You're building a for-profit company with a cutting-edge technology that's protected so that you can sell your product to the people who can afford it, not everybody. This isn't getting shipped complimentary to the people across Africa or the people in Latin America.
Yeah.
And if a government comes in, if Israel comes in or the United States comes in and says, hey, we want to take 100% of your supply starting July 1st, any good business decision would say, you got it. And then all of a sudden it's a one client product.
So let's go back to where I talked about the North Star of the company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because this is important because you've touched on a nerve that I think is undeserving. Okay. And again, this is a dialogue between you and me. So and thank you for making this such a safe environment that I feel comfortable to open up and engage, because I've never engaged with anybody on this level, on this deep level. So like ultimately, if you look at the words that I talked about in our North Star, discover, develop, manufacture, and democratize. What we're focusing on every single day with our process engineers is how we build. Today, we are a 1,200 liter bioreactor. Tomorrow, I need to be in a 2,500 liter bioreactor. In 2 years' time, I need to be in 5,000 liters. Right? In 5 years' time, I need to be in 10,000 liters. Why? Because I got to get the price down. This business is going to be built off democratization. And let me tell you, the proof is in the pudding. And I'll tell you why. And you can challenge me, but ultimately our behavior, our principles are anchored always in our behavior. This little baby, 3 months Vinia, came to the US in May 2021, $99. Okay. Company was losing millions of dollars. Okay. What is the price today? More than 4 years afterwards? $99. Show me another company out there. Go and find another company in not just this space. I'll give you more latitude. Go and find me another company out there, for-profit company out there, that is selling their products today, 4 years after, at the same price. And by the way, we're a public company. We're listed on NASDAQ. So everything I'm sharing with you is public information. Our gross profit in the first quarter of this year was 58.5%. How did we get there? We got there through scale, not through increasing price. Last year, we drove 1,000 basis points. We got there through scale in gross profit margin. We got there through scale. Everything I think and dream about together with our R&D team, our engineering team, my manufacturing organization is anchored in process engineering breakthroughs, in biological process engineering. So maybe it can be 100,000 liter bioreactor, Andrew, because ultimately then we can produce the nutrition for the world. We can produce the next generations of science-based therapeutic solutions which can be democratized. And yes, we can build some shareholder value, because the ethos of the company, and I say this every single day, not just to my team, but even to our shareholders who have been unbelievably patient. Some of them has been a 10-year journey. And those of you out there that are listening to this, I thank you for your patience. I always say our number one priority, and listen carefully, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, all right? Please listen carefully from my heart to you. Our number one priority is driving and building human utility value every day. And what is human utility value? Human utility value is driving a transformational, positive change in people's health and wellness. And if we drive human utility value every day, guess what? The shareholder value will follow. But it's in that order. So this is the DNA of the company, the principles of how we think. And this is a great example of how we behave. Even now, tariffs. We have tariffs. Okay? We're eating the tariff. I was sitting this morning with my finance team talking about, okay, what costs do we have to cut? Unrelated to people, because, people are so critical in our part of the business in order to address tariffs. Now, fortunately, it's a 17% or 10% tariff today. It was 17% to Israel. Now it's 10%. Who knows what it's going to be at the end of this month, right? Got to plan for the worst, right? So this is, and I know you might be looking at me saying, Ilan, it sounds, you guys sound, too naive. Okay. It's good. The world needs, specifically in the area of health and wellness and driving life-changing solutions, it needs some naive people. Because if you weren't naive and you went to the dark side of the force, right, then there would be no hope.
I don't think naive or naivety is
maybe I'm being
commensurate with the dark side of the force, and I don't think naivety is what.
But there's a tension. There's a tension because you become cynical. Like there's a level of cynicism which I think you have a little bit, and okay, that's okay. I understand that. My only point of view is like your cynicism doesn't reflect the DNA and the heart of our company and what we're trying to do.
Well, and again, I don't know that cynicism is the right word either, but I would say that there's a level of practicality there, and one of the reasons I was excited to have you here, one of the reasons I invited you here, was because I think it is irrefutable, the practical value of what you've built and what Vinia brings to the table. So we'll talk about the product here, because this is where I think the rubber meets the road. Whatever happens in the world, whatever happens with Donald Trump, whatever happens with Netanyahu, whatever happens with Israel, whatever happens with Iran or US or any of it, whatever happens in the world, there is no denying that it's going to continue to be difficult. Age works against us. I would argue that politics is working against us. Conflict works against us. And human beings are human beings. We don't have a solution to conflict anytime soon. We don't have a solution to aging anytime soon. So we have to prepare practically for whatever is coming that is high likelihood coming. Vasodilation and vasoconstriction are words that I'm familiar with all the way back to my time at the Air Force Academy, because it's fundamental to the adaptation in the human body that grows muscle, that adapts your everything from your heart to your lung capacity, your brain. So these are very fundamental terms, how much your blood vessels constrict or dilate and how quickly they go from one to the other. It affects your body temperature. It affects your blood pressure. It affects your heart rate. It affects your endurance. It affects a number of things. So what attracted me to your company and to Vinia was this promise of an organic-based solution that would have a physiological impact, specifically not on my heart, but on the blood flow through my body. Again, I was taught everything heals faster with better blood flow.
Correct.
More white blood cells get circulated
it's
through your
all
body.
oxygen, the power of oxygen.
So what you need
and
is
nutrients.
What you need is not necessarily a special pill that delivers a synthetic compound. What you need is just more blood flow. I was taught that one of the fastest ways to heal is to just keep exercising.
Correct.
If you keep exercising, you just keep cycling blood through. It carries out all the toxins and it brings back all the fresh white blood cells and all the fresh oxygen. So I was really interested, and that's what hooked me into your web of ideology, right? Now, since then, I would say that it's been very inspiring to hear your true heart, to hear your passion, to hear your conviction.
You got a lot out of me today.
Well, I mean, it's all very important,
Yeah.
because that is true leadership.
Thank you.
As the leader of your company, I can absolutely see why you would have a shareholder that would hold on for 10 years, because it's hard to deny that there's only two ways this whole thing ends. You either succeed or you don't succeed. That's it. It's very binary here.
Yeah. Failure is not an option.
And for you,
that's what keeps me up at night.
For you, there is no other option. There's only success.
And I go to bed at night. It's interesting you say that. I'll share this with you. I go to bed at night and I work long days. I probably now at my age, and I'm not complaining because I love it. I work harder than I've ever worked in my life. Thank God my kids are a little bit older, and thank God for the Sabbath as well. I have time with my kids on the Sabbath, no working on the Sabbath. But normally it's easily a 17, 18 hour day, specifically with manufacturing in Israel, R&D in Israel, and then publicly listed companies. So you kind of do your night shift, right? And what keeps me going is the fact that we have this amazing connectivity to tens of thousands of customers and customer reviews. When I decided to come into this role, I made it like a mandate that every single review, every complaint comes into my inbox, and I read every single customer review. Today, we have more than 9,400 reviews on our Vinia.com website with a 4.8 out of 5 verified rating. I have the pleasure of going to bed at night. It's normally my routine. I lie in bed with my iPhone. Drives my wife crazy because of the light. I got to put it on low light. And I read the reviews, right? And when you understand the magnitude of change that your product is making to people's lives, ultimately anchored in the benefits of blood flow, whether you're a super senior, as we call those people, that really are looking for solutions to help their blood flow because at that stage of their life, think about it. People today, 65 is not the retirement age, specifically with 401ks and all the challenges that people have. People today have to work to 75, right? At least some type of employment. They need that better blood flow to have more of the physical energy and the mental alertness. You can't believe the fact that no more brain fog. Right, this is 1 in 3 Americans, according to an NIA study, suffers from brain fog. When you wake up with Vinia, boom, you're on. Right, you can work. This is probably my biggest challenge because I wake up early in the morning and I'm working. Right, so I have the benefit of reading those reviews, whether it's a super senior, whether it's reviews that really touch the heart in a different way of first responders. Right, first responders, firefighters. Blood flow. How important is blood flow for first responders? Basically firefighters, the bell rings, you've got to be running to that engine sharp. You've got to have blood flowing through you because of the toxicity that you're dealing with in that kind of environment and the importance of oxygen. And the reviews that we get from the first responders, whether it's police officers, firefighters, emergency ER workers, yes, military. We do ship a lot of product to U.S. military across the world. Veterans who are dealing with their challenges. And that's one of the reasons, going back to the philosophy of the company, we have a special program, we call it Vinia Heroes, where we give 20% discount to all first responders for life. You can look at every other USA company. And I challenge you, find another company out there. Yeah, it's 10% for the first purchase. It's 15% for the first purchase. 20% off for life. We today, and I'm so proud, this little Israeli company is powering first responders in this country, the most critical parts of our community. And oh, by the way, Andrew, we added teachers, 3.5 million school teachers, educators, to that first responders list. My mum was a school teacher. I grew up in a house with a school teacher. I understand that these are the people that are at the forefront of developing the values in our children, just like our police officers, firefighters are protecting the community. So we added them to the VINIA program. And it's amazing to see the stories of how we're able to improve their overall ability to protect the community and provide for the community. And so going back to the reviews, I lie in bed at night, I read through these reviews, and this is when I realize as a CEO and talk about just the pressure that you have on your shoulders, I kind of say to myself, Ilan, like what we have, not VINIA. VINIA is, again, the validation of the technology, but we have a technology in our hands today. It's a gift. I like to call it's a gift from God. Yes, our PhD plant cell biologists, and I believe we have probably the best PhD plant cell biologists in the world, for sure, in Israel, that have been working with us, all of them, for more than 15 years. So you can imagine the know-how that we've built. They've developed something, and in this time, they've climbed Mount Everest and back 5 times, breaking biological barriers that no other company has broken before. And I'll say it again, it's probably just Israeli female tenacity to change the world and not to give up that has gotten us this far. And as CEO of the company, I lie in bed at night saying, don't mess it up. Don't mess it up, because we have an opportunity to change the world. And it goes back to changing the world, to make the world a better place and to bring a level of health and wellness to the world from the plant kingdom by using responsibly the plant kingdom and not abusing it.
So for people who are still watching, which I don't know how much you know about podcasting, it's very, very small, the people who are still watching. But the people who are still watching are the ones that are the most interested. I will say this. I do not hold your optimism about the future. I do not believe that our biggest challenges are the environment. I do not believe that our biggest challenges are population. People will make sure the population never gets that large. You can always count on people to hurt other people.
I hope it doesn't get there.
I hope it doesn't too, but nevertheless, you got to look at both sides of the coin, right? There's light and there's dark.
Yeah.
But here's what I will say. The practical purpose of what you've created and the practical purpose of the product that we're talking about here today is not something that's up for debate. Whether you believe in a wonderful future where we're all democratized and we're all equal and we're all fair, or whether you believe in a future that is challenging, that is continual struggle, that is forever difficult, the benefits that VINIA brings to the table can't be questioned. It will benefit you no matter which scenario plays forward. So can you just tell everybody, where do they find VINIA? Where do they go to learn more? Where do they find the reviews that keep you up, that you get to look at every night? How do they find the product? How do they get to tap into this benefit?
So thank you. It's been a great journey the last couple of hours, hour and a half. You've definitely had me on my toes and taken me to places I haven't been before. And I hope I've been able to articulate and express myself in a manner that has really conveyed the magnitude of and the gravity of where our technology can play in the world to come. As it relates, so thank you for that opportunity. As it relates to VINIA, people can find more information on VINIA on vinia.com. This is our website. You can also find VINIA on Amazon for some of those Amazon crazy people that only shop on Amazon.
That's my wife.
Yeah, and that's okay. And basically you'll find, as you go into vinia.com, you'll find very well segmented and explained our technology, the science behind VINIA. There's a large section on all our reviews where you can read all the reviews. You can listen to hundreds of video testimonials as well. And if people have questions about the company and are interested in the company, BioHarvest Sciences, they can email me directly. I like to, when I came into this role 5 years ago, I said that I wanted to be as accessible and transparent a CEO as possible. And I do my best as much as you can in the confines of being a public company. So if you send me an email at Ilan, ILAN, @bioharvest.com, I promise you I have a service level agreement of 48 hours to respond because we care about those emails. It's amazing. We're building a movement of change in the world. I'll leave you with this. And so the amount of emails I get from our shareholders every single week, it's significant. Because we're building this, and I don't like to call our shareholders. I actually, my more appropriate term to describe them are shareholder partners. Because each one of our shareholder partners, whether you own 10 shares in the company or 100,000 shares in the company, you're a partner that's made a specific decision to be part of this journey to build a movement of change in the world. And this is really what we've talked about this whole podcast, about building a movement of change. I'm one little guy, right, with a big vision that's making progress, but I got a long way to go to build this movement of change. And Andrew, it's amazing to see how so many people are coming on board and partnering with us as shareholder partners in many cases, sometimes other types of partners in building this movement of change. And the amount of emails I get from doctors out there saying, Ilan, have you seen this? Have you looked at this plant addressing this condition? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this industry? Have you thought about this application? And it's amazing because sometimes there's gems of ideas that come from these partners, because I'm just a hardworking CEO that's just trying to deal with the grind of growing a business, coming up for oxygen, as much as possible to make sure I'm in line with that North Star that we spoke about and that vision. So for anybody out there, again, I'm not selling the product. I'm here to bring people on board to be part of this building of a movement of change in the world. If there's anybody that's interested, feel very free to send me an email. We have every week, we try and do it as often as possible, Coffee with Ilan. It's a Zoom, 1 hour, where shareholders or shareholders to be can ask me any questions, because ultimately we're trying to build a company of transparency, of accessibility, because these are critical values that I believe are important in a company that's trying to build a movement of change, and with a technology that we believe has the potential magnitude to really change people's lives. And maybe Andrew can actually bring a bridge to peace in many conflicts today, because when people sit across the table from each other and one partner has a solution to the other partner's health, maybe that indeed is a strong enough incentive to put the conflict away.
So folks, make sure that you visit vinia.com, vinia.com, vinia.com. I want you to take this. I want you to see if it has an impact on you. For me, my results happen very quickly. Within just a few days, I actually started with the chews, which you have here.
Do you want to just talk about the chews? Because the chews is a little bit different because it's got 2 times. The chews is focused on athletes and super active people. You're probably a great example of a chew consumer.
So I'm saying it just because with a 2 times dose with the chews, I mean, it was really just 3 or 5 days before I really started to feel a difference. And I could track the difference with all of my bio-tracking tools, right? I could see the change in my heart rate. I could see the change in my sleep patterns. I could see the change in multiple things along with just what I circumstantially felt. But I say this because there's lots of people looking for effective, organic supplement solutions. People like me who don't like to take
so just one
5
thing
pills
again,
at one time.
Sorry to cut you off. I just want to be, because it's all about transparency. We don't call our supplement organic.
Right.
Okay. And
I'm not talking about organic like what you see.
Because organic has to do with soil.
Right.
And the organic guys, they're still trying to figure out technologies like ours because it's grown in a bioreactor.
Right.
So just
I
wanted to make sure there was no, just want to be transparent.
That's fair. I'm talking about things that come from natural sources.
Absolutely.
Right. So I don't like to take a bunch of pills. I don't like to, I skip past all of the supplement aisles in grocery stores. Like I don't like the chemical synthesis process. So I stay away from that altogether. So it was very nice to see something like this that was an alternate to that. So for everybody watching, visit vinia.com. Don't email Ilan. He's a CEO. He's way too busy.
No, if they are passionate about joining our movement of change, I challenge them. Email me. You'll get a response within 48 hours. And, as we say in Israel, in the Middle East, I think, actually, yalla, let's come and be part of our journey. And there will be a special coupon, Andrew 10, where you will get a 10% discount for being a listener of this podcast on the first order. And if you're a first line responder or first responder as they call it, including teachers out there. Remember, you put your code, there's a section on the website for you first responders. Go in, put your specific number. If you're a firefighter, you have a specific number. We verify you and you get your 20% off for life.
So folks, make a chance, make time to visit Vinia. Thank you very much for being here. The last thing I want to say is I want to take a moment to call attention to how different your position was here today from what is commonly spoken about across the United States media about Israel and about the Israeli people and about Israeli politics and Israel in general. There's a strong narrative that is heavily politicized on both sides. And I thought you did a phenomenal job of just being true to the innovation, the ingenuity, and the tenacity of the Israeli people. And the Israeli people are the Israeli people. They are different than just Jewish people. Jewish people are separate from just Israeli people. So
Correct.
the arguments that we get so mixed up in here in the United States are just a distraction from the fact that there are hardworking mothers and fathers, innovators, business owners, scientists who are just trying to make a positive impact on this world around us. And as much as it seems like the world may be burning when you look at it through a lens of politics, thank you for bringing a story that looks at how the world is growing through the lens of sciences and community.
Thank you for bringing me here to this beautiful part of the world. It's a long way from north of Tel Aviv. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to share that vision and dream that we have as a company.
Yeah, I hope we have you back again, Ilan. Good luck.
Thank you.
Freedom! So fresh, so new. Freedom!